let's roll the highlight MVP right there. Joel Embiid, though the start of the game, it was a little physical, and I know a lot of people are talking about moments like this. Joel Embiid is called for the offensive foul on the swim move right there, just making multiple points of contact that immobilized Isaiah Hartenstein. And then, again, watch this right here. Embiid grabs the leg, and then, it just was a tough situation to jurisdict. But here's Tom Thibodeau after the game on this.
Which one? The one they called or the one they didn't call? Okay. Oh, okay. All right. I just want to make sure we have clarity on that.
Wendy, your thoughts on the physicality in this play right here from Joel?
Well, Joel Embiid is lucky that he was not ejected from this game, not just for that play, but he could have been called for a second flagrant on two different plays. He hit Hartenstein, and then also he did a sort of a Draymond scissor kick to Mitch Robinson later in the first half. He was sort of a little bit out of control. And if you want my honest assessment, it was a huge advantage that he was still in this game at the end of this first half.
That is true, even though the New York Knicks continued to fight back. But then Joel Embiid had himself a second half, particularly the third quarter, where he went 4 for 4 from the third, which is the most in any quarter of his career. And then halfway through the fourth, we see it continue. He did it from 3 levels. But particularly, he realized that, hey, if this game is going to be physical and I'm getting called for it, I'm going to stay on the perimeter and I'm going to shoot. And watch him knock down this jumper over Jalen Brunson. So far, we have seen, we saw a game 2 that was interesting. We saw a game 3 that also was interesting. Overall, the Sixers win the game. And here is Joel Embiid after dropping 58-4 after the game.
It's just meant to be. Just got to take it as it is. But the one thing I'm not going to do is give up. No matter what happens, got to keep pushing, got to keep fighting. Got to keep putting my body on the line for my family, for this city, for this team. I can't sit back and be like, every single time feel bad about myself.
Joel Embiid had the best game of his playoff career and dropped a 50-piece special, all flats. That's for you, Perk, versus the Knicks. I'm sorry, it's your Knicks as well. He is just the third player to score 50 against the Knicks in a playoff game. The others are all Hall of Famers, Sam Jones and his airness, Michael Jordan. So, Brian, Embiid seems to be successfully fighting off all of those playoff demons of the past so far in this series. What are your takeaways from the game?
2 things I want to say. One, he had the greatest playoff game of his career while dealing, as he revealed after the game, with the Bell's palsy, which is paralyzing the left side of his face. He can't blink his left eye. He said that sometimes his left eye goes blurry. And Bell's palsy is usually caused by, it's usually a result of an underlying condition. I don't know what he's dealing with on a day-to-day basis, much less the knee. And he drops an absolute enormous game in a must-win situation that was huge. So I have to acknowledge that this is one of the great performances we've seen in the playoffs in years when you consider all that. So he needs to be applauded for that. The second thing is, the New York Knicks can withdraw, or the Philadelphia 76ers can withdraw their grievance or whatever they were pretending they were going to do after game 2, because whatever you think that you were wronged by in that last 2-minute report and whatever you think is unfair, Joel Embiid was fortunate to not get ejected from this game. Again, I wouldn't even be surprised if the NBA, retroactively upgrades one of those fouls to a flagrant. And if he had gotten a second flagrant one, he would have been ejected. So the fact that Joel Embiid was able to stay in this game, in my view, maybe not in the 76ers fans' view, but in my view, squares us when it comes to officiating in this series. I don't want to hear about game 2 again. We're square. It's 2-1 Knicks, and let's move forward.
Look, you kind of are giving the Knicks fans more to be mad about, but when we think about the basketball gods, yes, let's just move forward. This is an instant classic already of a series. So, Scott, you know the Knicks better than anyone. Do you think that the momentum has really shifted in the series after what we saw in Game 3?
I think it's slightly shifted towards the Sixers. Now, look, you don't get down in a series until you lose at home. So it was important that the Sixers get this one. Joel has an epic performance. Playing on one leg, I think it's inspiring his team. It gives the Philadelphia team a lot of confidence. And one thing, if you're a Philadelphia fan, to take away from this game, Jalen Brunson had his best game by far in this series. And so The Knicks' best player had his best game. The Sixers' best player had his best game. Best on best, Philly won. So you got to be encouraged about that if you're Philadelphia going into Game 4.
The Magic were in a must-win situation last night in Orlando, and playoff P, as in playoff Paolo, was on full display. In the best-of-7 series, Cavs versus Magic, the Cavs are 15-0 all-time with 2-0 lead, and the Magic are 0-6 all-time when facing that type of deficit. But Paolo, I guess we're saying it, playoff P, came to play. He had himself a night.
Oh, he was excellent. It's great to see a young player respond after having 2 rough games on the road to start the series with 15 combined turnovers in Cleveland. He was awesome. Set the tone in the very beginning with his aggression. 31 points on the night. He led this Magic team, gives them confidence going into Game 4.
And what you just saw right there by the Magic is their bread and butter. They have defense that turns into offense, but when your offense shows up like this, Paolo Banchero, who had 19 points, 18 field goal attempts, he was like, I'm going to shoot my shot in the first half as the Magic led 61-45 at the half. As we go into the third quarter, I mean, Paolo gets back to his spot.
Yeah, Paolo, again, just was super aggressive all night, and when he has that outside shot working, he is really tough to defend.
Look at that package, though.
Exactly.
Off the
and
dribble.
He's super strong, isn't he?
Magic go on to win 121-83. Paolo Banchero, 31, 14 rebounds, and guess what? 0 turnovers.
Exactly.
Don't sleep on last year's Rookie of the Year. The Magic get their first home playoff win since 2011, and Paolo Banchero announced himself to the NBA world in a very big way. Paolo became the 3rd youngest player in NBA history with 30 points and 10 rebounds in a playoff game. Now get this, only LeBron and Magic did it at a younger age. So let's stick in the East though here, as the Bucks though, another team in the East, may be without 2 of their core pieces tonight in Game 3 versus the Pacers. Giannis has missed the last 5 games due to a calf injury, while Chris Middleton twisted his ankle in Game 2. So for more on those 2 key players for the Bucks, I'd like to welcome in our Bucks reporter live from Game 3 in Indiana, Jamal Collier. Hey, Jamal. So we know that Giannis is out tonight for the 5th consecutive game. What more can you tell us about his recovery?
Well, Shanae, the Bucks are still optimistic about just the steps that Giannis has taken in that calf injury, the progress that he's made over these past few weeks. He's been on the court for most of the past week. He has been running, has not been running yet. He's been jogging, he's been shooting, and the key is for him to get running before they're ready for him to go back on the court in a game situation. Doc Rivers mentioned that he has not participated in a full 5-on-5 practice just yet, and he may not have to before he gets back on the court. But for all the improvements they have seen from him, and they're still optimistic that they will see him at some point in this series, they've got to see him running and testing that calf out at full speed before he's ready to play in a game here in this series.
So a little bit more movement for Giannis. How about his running mate, Chris Middleton? What is his status for tonight?
Yeah, well, Middleton, it was a surprise to see that he did not practice on yesterday, because he said it right after Game 2 that he thought that ankle was fine and he was going to be able to bounce back. But going into this game, he's questionable. The Bucks want to see how he warms up tonight before determining his status. But Shanae, in practice yesterday, they were, going through a game plan as if Middleton would not play. I mean, Doc Rivers talked about ways they'd have to necessarily generate offense, whether it be posting up Brook Lopez more, and just finding ways for Damian Lillard, if he's going to have an even heavier scoring load on him, how can they rest Dame? How can they can't afford to have him not actually on the floor? Can they sort of manipulate the TV timeouts to give him an extra breather if he's got to do more? They did win 2 games this year that Giannis and Middleton did not play when they just had to rely on Dame. But going into this Game 3, they, as Doc said, they're in a hold their breath situation because Middleton's status is really up in the air here before he can get on the court and test it a couple hours before Game 3.
Jamal, I said it yesterday, that movie, Waiting to Exhale, it feels like that's what all the Milwaukee Bucks fans are feeling right now. And I know that's one of your favorite movies as well. I gotta concur, right? Thanks so much, Jamal.
It's a classic.
It is a classic. Thank you so much. As you mentioned, this is new territory for the Bucks. They're potentially missing both Giannis and Middleton, their 2021 championship duo. That has only happened twice this season, but as Jamal mentioned, Milwaukee was able to win both of those games. So let's get Brian Windhorst and Scott back into this conversation. With Chris Middleton's status in question and Giannis still out, Brian, how much longer can the Bucks survive with all of these injuries?
Yeah, well, they're not going to be able to survive this series if they can't get these production from these two guys. And obviously tonight's game plan is heavily dependent on Middleton. But I think Doc Rivers' big choices could be at the defensive end. The strategy that they've put in place for these first two games is to really limit Tyrese Halliburton. They've been trapping him, forcing the ball out of his hands. He has just 17 total shots in the first two games. But that has opened the door for Pascal Siakam, who's having one of the most prolific performances in the postseason thus far. 36 points in game one, 37 points in game two. He's getting the ball way too cleanly and easily. And look, they also had their role players shoot well from three-point range in game two. Kind of a choice that you got to make. Stick with your game plan. The guy who beat them 4 times in the regular season was Halliburton. Or do you have to adjust to worry about Pascal Siakam, who's been killing them in games 1 and 2?
Look, I think they need Dame time tonight, for sure. What we've seen throughout his career, he's got to have a huge scoring output tonight. And then you need Bobby Portis as well as Brook Lopez to up their scoring output tonight as well. Look, it's going to be tough for them to rely on their defense. The Milwaukee Bucks have been spotty defensively all season long. They're playing a team that's one of the top scoring offensive teams in the league. They're going to have to score with this team enough to keep it close and let Dame do what Dame does and pull it out in the end.
Yeah, I mean, look at the difference between first half and second half for Dame Lillard. It feels like he gives all of his energy in the first. He's got to find a way to muster up some more because they need him now more than ever.
Wanna try to boast at what I look like. Think I'm gonna try to wear I pull up long range. Jimmy with the heat, I'm on fire. It's NBA over here, feeling fun.